teenagers are going through really similar things right now because everything's crazy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Kids Are Talking, sponsored by Paradigm Financial Partners, and we have a great show ready for you today. We've got our guest panelists coming back from last week, and we have another star coming. Becca Rauweiser is here to discuss her article, When Wellness is Dangerous. So let's get to it. Let me introduce Dr. Don's here. Come on over, Dr. Don. You ready for the show?
Mike, how you doing, man? It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Good to see everybody. Tonight is a really great opportunity to do a second show because backstage I was told that they want to go deeper, that we didn't have enough time. So tonight, even my 10-year-old grandson from Washington, D.C. said he wants to join the party tonight, and he wants to go deeper, Poppy. Let's go deeper. So because of what was said backstage, you're all going to get a chance to do that. A couple of things I just want to say. One in particular is I want to really honor all the teenagers and middle school kids, even elementary school kids who have gotten through this really horrific year of COVID-19. A lot of people just graduated. Some kids graduated to high school. Some kids graduated high school and maybe they'll even get to go to college next year. Some of you kids were on remote and you really made it through one of the most difficult years that we've seen in our lifetime. And certainly you're younger, so you're really clearly the most difficult in your lifetime. So I want to honor and toast. I know we're not out of this yet. As a matter of fact, I feel we're in no man's land, but we're at least out of post-trauma at the moment, COVID-19.
Well, listen, for the first time ever, I was at a school ceremony yesterday for my daughter, and they gave an award to one of the students to the best distance learner.
Wow.
Never
So
before
nice.
Awarded to anybody, but at least
really,
they make the best out of what they had, you know?
Really amazing. And, I'll tell you, when I think about it, think about the kids that never got to college, the ADD kids that were on remote. I know that Whitley never got to school at all. She was on remote. Whitley's the guest from last week who's with us tonight. And I'm really, really proud that we started this show now and that we have such wonderful kids. We've been getting wonderful, enthusiastic responses from everybody around the country. And we are really tonight honored to have Becca Rauweiser here. When Wellness is Dangerous, a topic and an article that she wrote. She just graduated from her school in California. And it's an article that has been getting a lot of attention because she addresses things that people don't talk about enough. And she was willing to come on tonight and talk to all of you. So I want to introduce you now to Becca Rauweiser to enlighten us with her own feelings and passions about the particular subject of eating disorders and body image.
Sure. Let's have a quick note from our sponsor, Paradigm, and then we'll bring Becca right on.
Kids Are Talking is sponsored by Paradigm Financial Partners. Align your values and financial goals. Build your wealth and financial security for a rich and satisfying life with Paradigm Financial Partners.
Hi, Don.
Becca, I'm so glad you're finally here. I mean, how long have we been wanting to do this, right? And we finally have you with us, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and talk about this important topic.
When Wellness is Dangerous. Tell us a little bit about this important article that doctors, nurses, social workers, feedback from all over the country about your article. What does that title mean?
Yeah, so basically today, first of all, I just wanted to say that I wanted to write this article because it's something that I'm extremely passionate about and that I think is so important because especially today it's only been exacerbated by the pandemic, but eating disorders and mental health, it's not something that should be taken lightly. It can be dangerous and it's extremely, extremely relevant. And as someone who just graduated as a journalism student, I think it's so important to share credible information. And that's kind of like my goal. I'm passionate about people receiving credible information. And these days with social media just blowing up, and especially people during the pandemic being on social media even more, it's so easy for anyone to be able to share information, which is amazing because anyone can share information. Anyone can be a journalist these days, technically. Anyone can be a nutritionist. Anyone can be an influencer. And that's the only time when it can get dangerous, because a lot of wellness influencers without any certification or degrees are sharing all these advice and tips. And when it comes to people's health and their bodies, that's when it becomes the most dangerous, and that's when it becomes serious. And that's why I think, since this issue is so underreported, that's when I knew that I wanted to be the one to talk about it, because no one else is. And there's literally only one study on it right now. So
that's amazing. One study?
Yeah, there's literally one study from 2018.
Wow.
And that blew my mind, because imagine when you think about how much has changed since 2018 with social media, with TikTok exploding, a pandemic's occurred. There needs to be more information out there, and it needs to be talked about more, because once again, eating disorders are like the number one cause of death. And it's so important for people. I just want to reach people, and I want to reach these teenagers specifically, because that's, the majority of TikTok's user base is 13 to 17-year-olds, which is crazy because, they're being fed all this information. I just want to help navigate them through their social media so that they can have that filter and know which advice that they should be taking.
That's really great. What do you think? How come how come nobody's writing about this or talking about this?
Well, people are talking about eating disorders. People are talking about mental health, body dysmorphia, all these different mental health issues, but people aren't really talking about how much social media has affected that. And a lot of people aren't talking about the great thing about influencers is that, anyone's able to share information, and that's great. But the thing is, a lot of people don't have that certification, don't have the education or the qualification. And a lot of people are willing to take advice from people who have a great aesthetic, who, have a lot of followers and, are famous or celebrities or daughters of a celebrity. And they see that and they just take that advice. And a lot of people are giving advice based on like personal things that work for them. But people don't realize that everyone's bodies are different. If what works for someone else doesn't work for another person. So yeah, I guess that's the big issue.
Do you think COVID has made people going through COVID-19, particularly in the past year and a half, have made people even more vulnerable about this particular subject?
Yes, for sure. Because, I remember what Julia said last week, which she took that time during the pandemic to better herself.
Right.
I know that a lot of people, some people tried to take that time to better themselves. And then instead, while trying to work to better themselves, it turned into obsessive thoughts and spending so much time, trying to be healthy and, follow these influencers' advice. And, I know that everyone's screen time skyrocketed during the pandemic. So, everyone's scrolling through TikTok and seeing these videos every day about what people are eating every day, how many calories they're consuming, how much they're moving, how much exercise they're performing. It can turn obsessive. So while Julia took the time to better herself, and a lot of people tried to take that time to better herself, I think it could easily turn obsessive. And that's also, I interviewed Amy Ruffalo. She's a licensed therapist and she specializes in eating disorders. She was saying that was like a primary concern that so many of her patients addressed, that, going through social media, it turned obsessive.
We talked last week about COVID, of course, exacerbated all of that, where you don't, people with eating disorders, the control issue, when you can't control things around you. Certainly we couldn't control the environment in the last year and a half. Tends to make you focus on your body with the weighing yourself and taking control, but you're really not in control of yourself. So what we do is we try to control everything around us or get control. So we focus on our body. So there was a lot of talk about that last week. You agree with that?
Yes, 100%. When things are out of control in our lives, it's so easy, to turn to the one thing that you can physically control. You can control how much you eat. You can control how much you work out. Right. You can control how much you copy these influencers or like take their advice, So when a lot of people were struggling with other things, they took it out in another way,
So the dysmorphia came up last week, that word. Could you help define what dysmorphia is for our audience?
Yes. So I remember I thought they explained it pretty well, but basically, it's when you see yourself, when you look in the mirror, you're seeing yourself in a different way that when everyone else does. And usually it's a more critical version of yourself that you're seeing. So it's just an inaccurate version of yourself. And so a lot of times that becomes obsessive because you're trying to work towards this image of yourself when you don't even see exactly what you look like. So it's very twisted.
So you're gonna be the first person that I'm gonna ask this question to tonight. When you look in the mirror, what does Becca see?
I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, for
You're not
me,
gonna be the only one to ask that question tonight. Just so you know.
I mean, I don't know. I think that what I would say to answer that question is that I think everyone is their biggest criticizer. So everyone looks at themselves harsher than other people. What people's biggest insecurities other people don't even notice. So that's how I would answer that question.
And was there anything personal in your life that made this subject a passion subject for you? Anything about what you struggled with your own body image or anything?
Well,
to your life?
that, I moved, so I'm from Connecticut and I moved to California for college, and, I'm kind of in the epitome place of, green juices and Soul Cycle and exercise. And, I was in a sorority, and, it's all around you. In California, especially, there's just such a big pressure on, image and looking like a certain way. And everywhere you go, everyone's in workout sets and, exercising and eating healthy and whatever. So I would say that I've definitely seen people struggle with it. I see every day I go on my phone and I could see all the toxic things on social media that could, perpetuate the issue even more. So yeah, it's all around you.
But not as much struggle for you or not, more for you, just that you were seeing so many other people around you that it disturbed you so much you had to write about it.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Like, it's just everywhere around you. And like, as like a journalist specifically, I like to take the more like objective view on the issue, where I don't like to talk about my personal issue, because I like to be objective about the issue. You know what I'm saying? But, I've definitely seen it all around me. I know people, it's everywhere. It's clearly like the statistics, it's just everywhere.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, last week I cited 51, like 50, I think 50 hours after 50 hours, somebody dies from an eating disorder. 50 hours or 51 hours. I mean, that's a remarkable statistic.
Mm-hmm.
Hospitalizations are up for eating disorders, particularly in the teenage and younger population. Mental health becomes a whole other issue to talk about. So what do you think of the kids last week?
They were incredible, so well spoken. I was so impressed. I was engaged the entire time. I'm really excited to talk to them about it too, because they were really inspiring and so mature.
Well, you're about to meet them. Okay, so let's do that. Let's meet our guests from last week who have been amazing. And there they are. Well, they're all just popping up in their boxes now. Okay, so let me introduce, let's go to Chris, who's on the right-hand side of you. Chris from Connecticut. Welcome back, bud.
Thanks for having me, Doctor.
You were too good, and you didn't get deep enough, so we had to have you come back this week, okay? And then, of course, Whitley from North Carolina, and I have some memories of last week that I'm going to get to with you later on. And welcome back to you, too. Nice to be back, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
You wanted to be back here, and people in North Carolina wanted you here, so get to meet Becca, and thank you for being back. And, of course, Julia, our Instagram girl. The one that's why I want you and Becca to talk, because you have your own Instagram, and the people she's writing about, you're not such a big fan, Becca, of what some people are doing on TikTok and Instagram. But I would like to know, actually start off with what you think of Julia's Instagram, because it's a big issue for her and a big passion.
Yeah. So the key
life of balance, right, Julia? Yeah. That's it.
First of all, I love that Instagram name. I think it's perfect. But yeah, the key, I guess, word in my title is when wellness is dangerous, because, some influencers use their platform and their following for good. And, Julia, I think your Instagram's amazing. I think that you're sharing your personal journey, and you're not saying you should take this advice. You're saying this is what works for me, and this is my journey through, recovering from an eating disorder. And you're not, telling people how much you're eating in a day, or telling people they should work out this much, or, telling people how many calories you're eating. You're telling people how you live your life of balance. And instead of telling people what they should do, people can use your Instagram as motivation, to recover as well. So I think that what you're doing is amazing. So that's why the key word is when wellness is dangerous.
You want to react to what Becca's saying, Julia?
Well, I totally agree, because I think a lot of people think that when someone is anti-diet culture or anti health influencers, they're anti-health, but that's not necessarily true. The keyword is when, because you're against a certain type of wellness. You shouldn't even call it wellness, because if it's toxic, that's not really well. But so I agree with you, because you can be anti-diet culture, not be anti-health. And that's why I really like your title.
How did her article affect you, Julia? What do you think of what Becca wrote about?
Well,
being an Instagram influencer that you are, right?
Well, I don't like to use that term, but
Yeah, I'm just being a little funny with you, but you don't like that term?
I think there's the negative connotation to it. Like Becca described in her article, how influencers, they have this bad rap of promoting toxic things and just living a lifestyle that a lot of other people, I don't know. I don't like that influencer term. So I think I can really relate to Becca's article when she describes not naming any influencers, but influencers altogether in the health and wellness world, how they can be toxic. I completely agree.
You're influencing in a very positive way. So we won't call you an influencer. We'll just say you're a good influence on people and supporting Becca's position to really think what's best for people. And the thing that I love about you is how you're so open and allow people to know your journey and what you've been through. And I know, Becca, you probably really like that. Julie, you could do that, as a lot of people liked what the three of you did last week. And Whitley, you, I have to tell you, there was something I wanted to get back to something you said. You said you were struggling with beginning to be on the verge of an eating disorder, but it didn't get there. And we never really got to explore that. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I would just have very toxic thoughts, I guess. I mean, just about my body and how I looked and what I thought I should and shouldn't be putting in it, and just a certain weight that I should be at. And so I was having a lot of just the thoughts of oh, well, I mean, if you didn't eat today, maybe you could reach that weight goal, or you could whatever. And I realized that it wasn't healthy. And so I kind of just, pushed the thoughts aside, but they were still there for a while.
How'd you fight it off?
Yeah. I don't really know why
How did you fight it off?
I honestly don't really know. I just kind of told myself, no, you can't do that. I still really don't understand what happened. It was just kind of an internal battle in my mind of just both sides, just you need to just not, and then the other side just being I don't really know.
Well, you were on remote for a year, so you didn't get to go to school for a year.
Right.
What did that do? I mean, didn't that exacerbate any kind of and make you more vulnerable?
Yeah, because I was at home by myself all the time, because whenever I'm at school, we have breakfast and then we go to lunch, and then I get home and I'm hungry, so I'll eat. But whenever I was at home, I had to regulate all of my meals and snacks and everything. And I tend to snack whenever I get bored, which isn't, healthy, but it's just, yeah. So I was trying to watch myself so I wouldn't do that. And it was hard to figure out what was a healthy way of watching what I eat to make sure I'm not putting a bunch of bad things in my body. And when I'm just telling myself to not eat so I can look a certain way.
Were you able to do the sports? Didn't you go back and say you played sports? Yeah. You were able. How come you were allowed to do that? You were allowed to do the sports. How come?
Well, we were allowed to go back to school, but I have a lot of family members who were pretty high risk for COVID. So I just decided that it would be better to stay home. But around the time that sports started, COVID had started dying down a little bit. It wasn't as much of a prevalent issue in my area, at least. And I felt it was safe enough for me to go back for sports at least. So I went back.
Do you know there were some kids, I don't know if all of you know this, but there were some kids that were on remote that were not allowed to get involved in the graduation or get involved in sports events. Were you all aware of that? Yeah, that actually happened. I don't know where, but it was cited somewhere. That's unbelievable. But I'm glad that you were able to get into that area of your life anyway. So what do you see when you look in the mirror?
I know that I don't see what other people see, I guess, because like I agree with Becca. Like I think everyone's their own worst critic. And sometimes I feel like I take it a little too far. So sometimes I just avoid thinking about how I look because I feel like that's better for my mental health. Like avoiding thinking about things isn't the best, but right now that's how I'm dealing with it. I mean, I tend to see like every single flaw that I think that there is, and then I tend to make it a bigger thing in my mind. So like if I'm breaking out, like I'll look in the mirror, I'll be like, oh no, I'm breaking out. This is awful. And I'll think about it all day, and I'll come back home and I'll look in the mirror again. I'm like, wait, that actually isn't as bad as I thought it was. And then I'll look at it for too long. I'm like, wait, no, it was. So I like exaggerate how bad things are in my mind.
Do you have any questions for Becca about her article or any comments about how it affected you last week?
I really enjoyed reading your article. It was really insightful, and I feel like I gained a lot from it. So I just wanted to like congratulate you on that because you did a good job.
That's nice. Mm-hmm. Chris, when you look in the mirror, what do you see?
I think a lot of the times, like kind of what everybody says, you're your own biggest critic. But when I find myself thinking that, I try to get to the bottom of it and kind of ask myself, why am I thinking about this? Because I feel like a lot of negatives people have about their own body are almost internalized from society and what they think they should look like. So for me, I know it's helpful. If, for example, I think I look bloated one day or look overweight, I'm like, why is that a bad thing? Why should I think that's something I should avoid? And that kind of helped me comfort myself and realize that. So
more self-acceptance of yourself?
Exactly. If you get to the bottom of why you're afraid to look like something or afraid to look a certain way, you can kind of help resolve your.
What I love about you, Chris, is you defy the stereotypes of what we normally think of guys. You're reflective, you're sensitive, you feel, and it's refreshing, right, ladies, to have Chris be that way. Vulnerable. Do you have any reactions or any kind of questions to Becca's article last week?
I think we talked about it pretty well. I think, Becca, I would congratulate you again. It's a really good article. It was pretty insightful. I really liked it.
Well, Becca, so far so good for you. Julia, what do you see when you look at yourself in the mirror?
I guess I'm like, I wouldn't say like everyone, but I don't like what I see. I actually kind of like Whitley. I avoid looking in mirrors. It's really stressful for me. Even right now, just having to look at myself on the computer is so stressful. If you see me fidgeting a lot, it's probably because I don't like a position I'm in. I know that sounds like so bad and conceited and vain, but it's just like my brain is always nitpicking these aspects of myself. So even this is stressful, but I had a mirror in my room on the wall, not on the wall, on the shelf, and I took it down and I put it in my closet. I avoid mirrors. I avoid my reflection, which is such a bad response and is not something anyone should try to model or copy me, but that's kind of where I'm at, just avoiding my image.
But you're beautifully honest. And that's what we love about you.
I don't know. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, it's bad, but I deal with it because I need to work on dealing with it.
What do you think, Becca? These kids are pretty honest and open to be on doing this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe people recognize that your article is more important when we listen tonight and have it get reinforced. Julia, did you, being who you are, do you have any questions for Becca in terms of what she wrote about and anything that you might want to ask her or responses about it?
I have to think. Let me see. I'll let you know. I will have them. Just give me some time.
Right. So you have time. So I'm now going to do something. I already hinted at it before you guys got on, ladies and gentlemen. You wanted to go deeper tonight. You felt we needed more time. you felt we want to take more risks. So here it is for me and everybody else. Here's your chance to do that. I can start with you, Julia, because you were talking about getting bloated. I think Chris mentioned. Were you the one that mentioned bloated, Chris? By the way, I understand that thing about being bloated. I always hope that I'm bloated and I didn't gain 3 pounds. So, but you were talking about being bloated and menstruating, right? And you were.
Yeah.
You want to talk more about that?
I think last week I was just talking about how it's like really hard for girls when they're on their period because you naturally are more bloated and it makes you feel uncomfortable in your body. But when Chris said, like just a couple minutes ago, how he's thinking, okay, but why should I feel bad if I'm bloated? Like, why has society put this idea in our mind that bloat is a bad thing? So now I'm kind of trying to learn that too. So I'm on my period and I'm bloated, but why should I let it affect my mood if it's just like my body's natural response to what's happening to me?
So that's getting a little deeper, isn't it?
Yes.
Whitley, can you relate to that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It is a struggle because it is your body's natural, like it's just natural. But it's also you're still looking in the, for me at least, I know I'm still looking in the mirror and I'm like, well, you know what, this probably isn't even bloating. This is probably just how I normally look. So I have a struggle with accepting that it's actually bloating, like it's a natural thing and it's not how I always look, just because I struggle with body image so much. For me, it's hard to differentiate what's actually bloating, what's actually like my normal body.
Yeah.
But that is what you actually look like. You have to think, but why is that a problem?
Yeah.
You know, that's where our internalized issues come out.
I was going to ask Dr. Don that.
Chris, what do you want to ask me?
You mentioned when you feel bloated, you get worried that you put on a couple pounds. Why do you worry about that? Why is that a bad thing?
Well, unfortunately, I get influenced by what other people say, and sometimes I just look at myself and I go, I just want to look better. So I'm vain. Do
you think that less weight is better?
You're really giving it to me, Chris. I'll tell you. Yeah, well, I have in my head, and then you all get a chance to answer the same question. Yeah, I have in my head that being thinner is better. I'm influenced by it. I think I look better when I don't have as much weight on me. I feel healthier. I feel more in control. And yeah, I was a thin, skinny basketball player, and then that didn't last. So yes, I am concerned also about that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't, but I also concerned about my health. I'm not getting any younger, and I'd like to feel that, at least that's what I hear from everybody, that if you stay thin, I'll move better on the tennis court. Maybe I'll live a little bit longer. And I do like, although I talked about this last week, when somebody says, oh my God, you look better, you look like you lost weight. Then I guess it makes me feel bad because they're really trying to say to me I was too heavy before. So it's hard to not be influenced on what other people think of me as well.
Can I add something to the bloating topic?
Sure.
Yeah, so like what everyone's been saying, it's such a natural occurrence. Like it's just how our body reacts sometimes when we eat food. And like going off of like my article, if you look on your TikTok feed, you'll probably find so many videos being like, this is a de-bloat smoothie, or like, all these social media talking about how you shouldn't be bloating and how to not bloat. And, it kind of festers in everyone's brains thinking, oh, okay, if I bloat, that means this is bad. I'm doing something wrong. I'm eating something wrong. I need to change that. So, I'm going to try this smoothie with, and honestly, half the people saying that, again, aren't certified, don't have the education. And it just, another thing besides just, it's unhealthy to take advice that, isn't credible. It's also just kind of forces us to think this way and forces us to think that bloating is bad. Bloating's, I need to fix this.
So let me ask you, because Chris asked me, and I guess we'd all have to think about that. Are you concerned about your body and your weight and how you look? Do you also focus on not wanting to be heavy and be thinner? That's for you, Becca.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't say Becca. Becca.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I just saw a question. So I was reading it, kind of talking about,
That's right. I need Mike to put a clock in front of me so I know what time it is, by the way. So
here, we can show the questions. One just came up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
no, I was just reading a question during it, and I thought it was really interesting.
Question for Becca.
Can you talk more about the connection between being healthier and being thinner?
Oh,
Well, yeah. So I was asking Becca about if she has issues about her weight.
Oh,
And so the question, what can you warn about the connection between being healthy and being thinner? Is that something we should try to unlearn, the fact that we're concerned about that?
yeah, because I feel like there's just such this ideal look that, again, like when you're going through social media and you're seeing all these influencers, promoting how they look and like pulling up their shirt and showing their six pack and their abs and, their thigh gap. And, that's the image that we're being shown every day. And it's not just women, it's guys too. Like, you'll go through your TikTok feed and you'll see, oh, like I need to bench press this, I need to eat this much protein, I need to do this. And I feel like, you can be healthy without having to look a certain way. Everyone's body's different. What works for one person doesn't work for everyone else. And that's something that we really need to kind of drill into our minds, because it's so easy to think that there's one image, there's one way to be healthy. And that's just not reality.
Do you feel for yourself that you're in a good place with that? Like, do you worry if you're gaining weight or losing weight? And
I do feel like I'm in a good place right now in my life, where I feel, I know what works for me. And, it takes everyone a while to get there. We're all figuring out what works for everyone else, and yeah, for the first time in my life, for sure, I feel the most secure in what works for me. And I don't like try to follow other people, especially because, I've done so much research on this. And, after 4 years of going to school in California, I see these issues all around me. And if anything, it just taught me a lot it's taught me a lot about myself and what works for me.
So you don't really worry about whether you gain 5 pounds or whether you lose. You're really pretty on top of that.
Yeah.
That's really great. And Whitley, how about you? Like, what do you think of this whole discussion that we're having right now?
Yeah, no, I think
About fat or thin or,
yeah, there's definitely an issue in our society because some people are just naturally built bigger, like bigger hips, like just bigger bones. Like when they're at their healthiest, they aren't like a twig. Like, and with just how like our society is, we're kind of expected to be skinnier, like not expected to be, but like people want to be. And some people that's not what's the healthiest for them. So I think that we do need to like get away from that whole like skinny equals healthy.
So it's a matter of basically what you would define as your own health.
Yes, sir.
Well, you people are pretty good. I got to still work on that, but I'm impressed that you guys are getting a grip on it way ahead of your time. What about, remember we talked last week, again, this was backstage, about sitting at the table. Was it you, Julia? I forgot who was talking about it, but like how sometimes you're sitting at a table and there's all that food on the table and you worry about, are you going to be judged or what are people going to think, like what's on the table and how much you eat. Did we talk about that last week backstage? I think you mentioned that, right? Or somebody did. Was it Whitley? I don't remember.
I think it might have been you.
Oh, was it me? Does anybody else have that feeling? Because I never eat that last piece of chocolate cake on the table. I can tell you that right now. That last piece of chocolate cake on the table, I'm waiting for somebody else to eat it. I'm never comfortable eating that last piece of chocolate cake.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Chris, why? Because I don't know. I just feel like maybe somebody else wants it, or I shouldn't eat it because I'm trying to stay healthy. And
do you feel that way, or do you feel like if you took the last piece of chocolate cake, you're scared that people are judging you?
I judge myself, but there's probably that feeling, well, maybe I wanted that chocolate cake. Why is he the one eating that chocolate cake? Yeah, there's a little bit of that. I think that and I'm also thinking I don't need it, but I'm thinking like maybe I already ate too much tonight and maybe I ought to just cool it. So there's probably some of that in there. None of you have that?
I definitely have that. I think being around friends, there's always a lot of unspoken thoughts about other people's eating choices or what they order or what they don't order, because in this like world that we live in of comparison, you're obviously going to compare what you order to what they order, what you eat to what they eat.
Right. Yeah, it's true. When I go out with my tennis guys, I'm the one that wants to eat more. They're also healthy and they're eating it like your father, Becca. I mean, he's always eating those good salads and talking to me how healthy he is. And then I thought, maybe Lee, I should have the salad. course, I do. And sometimes he wants the eggs Benedict, and I say, let's split it.
He loves Eggs Benedict.
What's that?
He loves Eggs Benedict.
Oh, he loves eggs Benedict at Sherwood Diner, and believe me, he's happy just eating it himself. But we've learned how to split our foods, and then I feel better. So what other things, like you said, you want to get deeper and take some risks and talk about other things? I actually have a question, and then for our viewers, what is the difference? I think a lot of people like to understand the difference between anorexia and bulimia. What is the difference between those two things? Anybody want to try to answer that question? Is this getting deeper and taking more risks? I feel like it's a question I wanted to ask anyway.
I think it's kind of difficult for us to explain it since we're not licensed like doctors in these subjects, but
you're not giving advice, Becca. They're not giving advice. It's just a question just to think what you think it is.
Oh, wait, so you're asking me?
Well, I'm asking anybody, actually, but, I was just thinking of you just now because that question, I'm not expecting anybody from that question to have the answers to. I think sometimes people get confused at what the difference is. So maybe you can answer it, Becca, if you'd like. Julie, yeah, Becca, Chris, Whitley. Go ahead,
I'm
Becca.
not really a certified doctor, with a hardcore definition, but I know that one, obviously, like bulimia has to do with, well, both of them are connected in a way, like obsessive thoughts about like eating and like, trying to, achieve a certain weight or, not seeing yourself exactly how it's all kind of like a mixture of each other and they all kind of correlate. But I guess bulimia has to do with, a lot of like binging and, obviously like the other way. So, and then anorexia doesn't really include that, but I don't know if that's really a good definition.
I just never can understand how somebody can, I hate throwing up, for instance. Man, I dread when I have to throw up. I don't understand how somebody is so desperate to want to cleanse their body of calories and food that they would force themselves to throw up. What makes somebody so desperate to do that?
Well, a lot of the time it has to do with like,
Julie, what's that, Becca? I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
A lot of the time it has to do with like, binge eating and then regret. So, binge eating, regret, restriction, sometimes, like forcing them to throw up. But yeah, Julie, you can continue.
Yeah, Julia, go ahead.
I feel like your comment now, since I disagreed with you a lot last week, I'm going to continue that trend. I feel like your comment is honestly pretty insensitive and rude because why is he like, oh, I can't even fathom how someone can make themselves throw up to rid the calories, but you can fathom how someone can go in a low-calorie diet or starve themselves to rid calories. You're like, I feel like you're painting one disorder in there.
Well, I'm not really trying to do that. I was basically trying to say that for me personally, it's so uncomfortable for me to do that to myself. I'm not trying to make a judgment about it. I'm just trying to understand the difference. There's all different kind of ways to do it. It's just for me, it's just so uncomfortable. But I actually trying to understand what is going on. It must be
it's the same reasons why someone is going to restrict or over-exercise.
You're just going to choose to do it that way is what you're saying.
I think it's really hard for anybody who doesn't experience that to understand it. I haven't experienced it, so I can't fully understand it. And I don't think you've experienced, Dr. Dunn, with that. So I think that's why it's really difficult to understand why someone would go to that extent. Yeah. So it's tough to vocalize and try to describe to somebody.
So I guess what I'm hearing is there's no way to answer that question, right, Julia?
There's a way to answer the question, the difference between anorexia and bulimia. There's, the reasons for what caused it, because there's also, like, for example, you can't say what's the reason why someone would choose to starve themselves. For some, it's control. For some, it's a desire for thinness. For some, it's to even prove a point to others. Everyone has a different reason for why they do what they do to themselves. So I feel like you can't just name one thing and say this is the reason.
Yeah, for me, I'm just saying for me, I try to either do portion control and find other ways to deal with my issues around weight. But no matter what the core and bottom line is, it's a painful journey, no matter how you do it. Can I get away with saying that, Julia?
What?
Can I get away with saying that? It's just a painful journey, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So back to getting deeper. Julia, deeper, take more risks? How else did you want? What other things did you want to do that we couldn't do last week that would be deeper and for us to go to other places tonight? Because even though, by the way, Mike, I don't know what time it is, so at some point I'd like a clock in front of me, or else you're all going to have to tell me what time it is. Well, maybe I'm not going to worry about the time because
7:40.
we can stay on as long as we want. So that's the good news. But Julia, we have still plenty of time, and what could we do to get even deeper on this subject?
I think that towards the end of our talk last week, that's when we were opening up more.
Are we opening up more right now? That's good. You all feel that we're opening up right more? Yeah? Whitley, we're opening up more?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mike just put a clock in front of me. Not that I really care what time it is, because you guys probably could talk all night. So it is, I'm not going to worry about it. But I do feel better having the clock. It makes me feel like I'm more in control. I'm just saying that. What else do you want to delve into right now, any of you, that we haven't covered or that you might be on your mind? Chris, anything you want to add to the conversation?
No, but I have seen these the comments. There's been some really great comments coming through. I don't know if Don, you can see them, but Deb Montner is giving a lot of good insight as to why it's really difficult to understand.
What do you see?
The
Chris?
Comments. Can you see comments coming through?
No, I don't see comments. What do you see, Chris? Tell
There
me what comments are you seeing, Chris, that I'm not seeing?
There's a lot of great comments.
Oh, where are they? Well, can you tell them, because I can't see them? So can you tell us what the comments are?
Yeah. Let's see if I can scroll back to what we were talking about before.
Okay.
There you go. They're up on the screen.
That's
Yeah, it's a lot about it's Deb also said desperation is often the motivation for a lot of these acts, and so if you're not in that position, it's hard to understand it. Caroline Reed said it's also not a choice, which is a good detail in terminology with what we were talking about with anorexia and bulimia. It's not a choice that people do these things.
It's not a choice. You're saying it's not a choice.
Not a choice. No.
And what about the comment? We'll all agree it's not a choice. The suicide comment. You want to address that? That was just, I just saw this comment about suicide.
Right. It goes along the lines with mental health and kind of being able to understand why people think certain things or feel the way they do. You can't really understand why someone would be suicidal until you're in their shoes. Yeah. And I think it goes hand in hand with anorexia or bulimia.
That's a good point. Whitley, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Until you've been in that situation or something similar to it, it is really hard to fathom how someone could even get in that mindset. But
right.
Once you understand, it makes sense. And I hope that no one gets to that point where they understand it. Mm-hmm. But it's a struggle, and you really do just have to live through it to understand.
Becca, what do you think about the whole thing about, we're talking about suicide and the things that Julie was saying, just about that comment that Chris is talking about? What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I totally agree with what everyone's saying. It's just hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes when it's kind of an issue that's so personal, so sensitive and emotional. And yeah, whether you can read all about it, you can research all about it, but until you actually live it and have those feelings, it's so hard to really, feel for someone else or understand fully what they're feeling.
So what would you say to anybody who's struggling with this, whether they're suicidal, whether they're struggling with their body image or having an eating disorder? What would be the best advice that you would give somebody, Becca?
Well, I mean, I think that those are two really different situations, obviously. I can't really group them together. But yeah, I mean, wow. I literally don't know what one piece of advice that I could give someone. But I guess my main piece of advice for someone who's struggling with an eating disorder is, I guess, yeah, what Caroline said, just be there for people. If you know someone going through it, if you just like be there for them, just make sure that they know that you're there, and comfort people during this time, because, no matter if you can't understand it, and yeah, seek professional help as well. But like, just being there for people, there's nothing you can say that really can change it. They need to be able to like change their mind on their own. That's like the biggest thing. You can't tell people to stop having eating disorder, stop having suicidal thoughts. Like that needs to be developed by themselves.
Does it feel good when somebody just says to you, "I really like what you're wearing. It's really pretty," or "You look beautiful today"? Does that feel good when someone says that to you?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, like it's nice to be complimented. Sometimes, honestly, for me, like when someone compliments me, I honestly usually feel very uncomfortable and awkward because I don't know. I feel like I'm bad at taking compliments sometimes, but I feel like I also think that, I know you were talking a lot about how it makes you feel bad when someone says, "Oh, you look like you lost weight," or, "You look great." Then you think, "Oh, did I not look so great before?"
Right.
So my main advice to people when they're, trying to make comments is to not make comments at all about people's appearance, about,
Really? Huh.
yeah, because
it's a dangerous place, right?
It's not asked for. And most of the time, no matter what you say, you're not going to get the response you want. Whether you compliment someone, they're going to take it a different way. So
how come it's hard to take? I'm sorry, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, I just think, don't compliment people's appearance in general, usually.
So how come it's hard to take a compliment for people like you or anybody?
I think once again, because everyone is their biggest criticizer. And I think that, everyone sees themselves differently. And yeah, I just think it's I don't know, for some reason, sometimes it's an awkward thing. I mean, I can appreciate someone, saying something nice about me, or even giving me helpful criticism or whatever. But, it's hard when someone comments on you because it makes you internalize it and think about yourself more,
Whitley, you're shaking your head. Do you feel the same way as Becca?
Yeah, like I agree. Sometimes it's just hard to just take compliments, especially if you don't agree with them, because
even if somebody tells you look beautiful, it's hard to take that.
Sometimes, especially if I'm not feeling like it that day, it's nice to hear, but it also it makes me uncomfortable too, because it just I don't really know why. And I think part of it's just like trying to be modest sometimes. Like society teaches girls especially, I mean, I'm from experience, like to be modest and just be like, "Oh, well, thank you." Like it's hard to figure out where being the difference between being modest and being like comfortable in your own body. Like there's a line, and it's hard to figure it out, I guess.
Yeah. And advice to somebody else would be who's struggling with suicide or deep eating struggles, what would you say to them?
I mean, I've had some friends that have struggled with both, and it is really difficult, but things will get better. They may get worse before they get better. I mean, but there are always things in life that make life worth living. You just have to stick around to kind of see them, I guess. And with eating disorders, it's not I don't know, just you have to just believe that things will get better. You have to, y'all were saying, get in that mindset where you can just change your thoughts, change your thought process, and just if you can have hope, if you can hold out hope, then I think that you'll be good.
Also, probably as that comment that flashed on the screen, that one I did see, Chris. Unconditional love, support, feeling that you matter, feeling that you're respected and you're safe. That makes you feel probably more in control of your life too, doesn't it? Julia, how about you? What?
I got those definitions that you were asking about before.
Oh, which definitions?
For the anorexia versus
bulimia.
bulimia.
Okay. There you go.
For anyone that's watching that was curious.
Okay.
Yeah, that's from pedia.com.
Thanks, Mike. Back to Julia. Julia, what advice would you give somebody who's struggling with all this? What did you need, or what helped you besides yourself?
I don't know how to give like one sentence of advice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one, there's such different topics. I don't necessarily want to speak on giving advice for both combined because I don't know enough to know if the advice could go for both of them together. And then what I can speak on from what I do know about eating disorders, I never really take advice. I more of just like live by mantras.
You left like by what?
Mantras. I don't know how to
Oh,
pronounce.
mantras?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Like, I don't know how to give advice, but I know like I ask myself questions, and those questions, I guess, serve as advice. I'm not really articulating this well. Like, for example, when I'm engaging in an unhealthy behavior, instead of giving myself advice, like just push through it, I would ask myself a question such as, would you treat your younger self like this? Or would you treat a loved one like this? Or when I'm fearing weight gain and I get on the scale and see I've gained weight and then I'm all upset, I say, hey, like, why do you feel this way? Like, is this a societal belief that has been pushed into you? So I don't know how to give advice. I only know how to give questions. My advice is ask yourself questions.
Well, that's really good advice, actually. That's great advice.
Yeah.
And what do you do if somebody tells you look beautiful today, or I like the necklace you're wearing, which I happen to like that you're wearing?
Oh.
What do you do with that kind of compliment?
I guess it's easier to take a compliment like I like your necklace. I just say thank you. If someone compliments a physical feature, I'll just say, I'm usually just like, oh, okay.
So it's better to comment on your necklace than to tell you might look beautiful tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so I'll just say I like your necklace. It's very attractive.
Thank you.
I'll leave it there. I don't want to get in trouble with you anymore tonight. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Chris, you're shaking your head. What do you feel the same way? You were shaking because I think you're the one that's always talking about you have to give yourself the good advice, right? And
yeah, I think
reflect.
Advice is a tricky thing when it comes to someone dealing with depression or an eating disorder, because usually advice comes from somebody who is a professional or very knowledgeable in that field. So for someone who has no experience or no professional knowledge in suicide prevention or eating disorders, it's really tough to give advice to somebody. It's almost like you're not in that position to give advice. So, I think it's healthier to be very supportive and be there in case someone needs you, and just be unconditional with your love. But I think it's really tough to just give advice to somebody.
I agree. Is he frozen?
What, Julia?
Oh, sorry. Was that just my computer or were you frozen?
What happened? Oh, was I frozen?
Yeah, I think you might.
Yeah.
Oh, I got frozen? Well, I'm not going to worry about it. I'll try not to be self-conscious about that. Seeing we're talking about body image and all that stuff. So am I frozen now?
No.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm relieved. I have COVID. I'm thinking, like, what's it like now? For here, we're gonna, in the 1920s in Paris, there was, whenever there's been turmoil historically, there was the 20s. After the war, there were the 60s in Vietnam. You have upheaval. There was an article in the New York Times recently about kids are now ready to break out, have a youth quake. They call it a youth quake. What's going to happen now with people as they've been isolated for a year and a half? And now, and that includes all of you, like now it's like I'm struggling with this kind of post-apocalyptic. All of a sudden my life is in a whirlwind. I was so used to having quiet and being isolated. And I was just thinking, like, Whitley, you're shaking your head. What do we do? What about that?
You hear everyone saying that these have been unprecedented times, and not to be another person saying that, but they have. So I don't really know what to expect, because there's really nothing that we can base this off of that I have knowledge of how it'll be different. But I think there will be a lot of positives and negatives that come from, just coming out of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think eventually it'll turn to where there are more positives than negatives once people start talking about it and really, just understanding, kind of like we're doing now.
What are we doing right now, Whitley? What are we doing?
We're
What are we
being
doing?
we're being open and honest, and we're talking about important things that people usually don't talk a lot about or don't go deep with. And I think that this is great, especially because, we're young and we get to, share our opinions because young people's voices usually don't get heard.
Yeah, I think you're all incredible, actually. I hope that all the people that are watching are going to watch it later. By the way, this is live, but if you want to watch this another time, it's record. All these shows are recorded, and I'm finding a lot of people have been struggling. Some people, not a lot, but some people have been struggling with finding the show. They do eventually find it, but it seems the best place to get it on YouTube is to go Kids Are Talking with Dr. Don. And so maybe people don't have to have as much stress knowing that that's really what you have to do. Kids Are Talking with Dr. Don, FaceTime, Twitch, YouTube, and live at 7 East Coast time, 4 o'clock West Coast time. What about Julie? What do you think about what we're heading into now, this post-COVID time, with how we struggle with that now?
I mean, I'm excited that the world is opening back up, but it's definitely going to be difficult. We've all changed a lot throughout the past year and a half, and I think it's going to be a time of learning how to re-navigate through the world.
You have any specific way that you want to re-navigate in the world?
I mean, even just seeing people without masks when I went into stores this
Yes.
week, it's awkward.
That's a good point. Aren't we used to seeing people in masks now? I mean, what's that going to be like now to see people? And people going to see us without our mask?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's going to be, something we used to be used to, but haven't been in a while. I think it might also spark some greater insecurities in how we present our faces because
not hiding behind the mask.
We're more vulnerable now, so that's gonna be something people have to work for because it wasn't this past year.
And Becca, here you are now. You're graduating college. You're going out into the world. Although how was it out there in California with COVID and masks and isolation? And were you in school full time or were you on remote?
I was fully remote this whole year.
Wow.
So California was pretty bad. It was the worst amount of cases. Now it's actually the best amount of cases. But yeah, it was pretty rough, I would say. But I was fortunate enough to be, a senior and live with all my best friends. But yeah, it was definitely, a struggle. I'm excited because things are really looking up around here. I am going to be moving back to the East Coast, but it's definitely going to be an adjustment. And I don't think things will be, ever go fully back to normal. Some things for the better, some things for the worse, but everything's changing. Education's changing, working is changing, technology's changing. It's going to be interesting to see what
it's a whirlwind. I'm a little bit nervous about this hospitalization that there's therapists. I know people are trying to see therapists and they don't have time to see them. I mean, with mental health right now and people struggling clearly with body image, clearly self-image. What do we do about that as a society now? I mean, the hospitalizations and people are not getting into even the emergency room.
I think a start would be free healthcare.
Free healthcare.
Not making money a limiting factor on who can have access to, the right facilities and treatments.
And Whitley, you're shaking that head. When you shake your head, I know you want to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Just because someone can't afford medication doesn't mean they don't deserve it. So that's something that I've always felt is, important for people to have access to medication, whether or not they have enough money in the bank that corporations, think would make them deserve or for them to be able to pay for it. I got lost in my own train of thought.
That's okay. Mike, you were saying something on the side there, Mike?
I said, Willie, it's like a medication is a right. It's a right that you have a right to be healthy.
You have a right to be healthy. Julie, what do you think about that?
I agree. I think that's a huge problem in our society, the lack of access to healthcare, and that's something we definitely need to work on, make it more accessible, lower, especially in mental health. agree with you. I believe that's probably one of the most difficult, actually, health treatments to access. And society really needs to work on viewing mental health as a serious issue, such as physical health.
I'll tell you, the schools need to get better.
Oh yeah, this whole suck.
Where
and
is
education about mental
I mean,
health versus
it's
physical.
unbelievable. I mean, like when I was in social work school, it was fantastic. Columbia, we actually did groups. We had group work internships in the high school where kids got to be in groups. I don't think any of that, am I right? Is any of that going on in the schools? What's going on? Whitley, what's going on?
Not much. Not
Very
much. I mean,
discouraging.
I live in an incredibly small town, so we don't have a lot of the resources a lot of other like big schools do. So a part of it, I live almost in a little different world. My friends and I joke about how we live in our own little world because it's just such a small town. But I mean, like we just got like school counselors like recently, like within the past, like couple years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. I mean, we had guidance counselors for like college, but not like you can talk about. I mean, maybe we could have, but they didn't tell us that it was like we could talk about like our mental health with them.
In North Carolina, in a small town, do you find the eating disorders, body image, things we talk about on the show, it's any different being in a small town, or it's still the same issues?
I mean, I don't have the experience of being in a big town to know what to compare it to, but I know that it's definitely a big issue and a lot of people struggle with it. And sometimes you can tell and sometimes you can't. I've had friends talk to me about their struggles and I'm just like, I had no idea. And others, I'm like, I kind of just assume based off how you act around food, I guess, or just how you talk. But it definitely is still a big issue in my small town, at least.
Well, I'll tell you right now, it's almost 3 minutes after 8. The beautiful thing is we're not on network television and we don't have a time limit, but I think that you all have been amazing. Is there anything else because here's one more chance to get deeper or say anything else anything you want to share with the people that are watching tonight that hasn't already been said? Because I will go a couple of extra minutes on this subject if you want. I'm sure our audience feels the same way. Does the silence mean that we've completed this particular segment of Kids Are Talking? I guess it sounds like we have. Anything you want to say that you learned differently tonight, or that you would basically take from tonight's show, or for yourself, or to give to anybody else? It was nice that you were all here. You were all amazing, and it's so nice to see that being in a group experience and sharing your feelings is unique, special, and I think you probably helped people tonight, and that's really important. So is there anything else that you want to say before I say goodnight? Becca, I'm looking at you because you weren't here last week. I'm just going to focus on you for a second. You came on tonight. You've written this very important article. What was tonight like for you? Is there anything that you take from tonight, or any response?
I learned a lot tonight, and I'm just really excited that that everyone here was so open to talk about this topic because it's so important. And I hope we reached people because it's such a prevalent issue. And I mean, everyone's just been so amazing, and I feel so lucky to be here.
Well, thank you. I feel very fortunate to have you and everybody else on this show. Would you all come back at another time if I do something? It may not even be on this subject. I may want to get you for something else. Would you all come back?
Yeah.
Is that unanimous, huh? That's great, because we might just call upon you. We have many different subjects we're going to be talking about in the future, right, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. Well, next week we're having modern sex and dating, right? Isn't that what we're doing?
Yeah, well, we've been working on this title. It's going to be called Modern Identity and Sexuality. It's Pride Month. It's Pride Month, and I think it would be important. That is a subject that is just the way you've been open about this very big subject, to talk about all the pronouns that people don't understand, all the things that's going on with people's identity, gender, sexuality. We have 4 people coming on next week that are willing to be as brave as you to honor Pride Month. And so I hope you'll all watch, all of you, and all of you out there who are watching tonight, I hope that you'll come back next week to honor, like we did tonight, these amazing, brave young people. And the only
And we also have a special guest coming, right? We have
Dan
we
Wu. Do have that special guest.
We have
yes.
an alumni from the
Yes.
1990s
Yes,
Kids Are
true.
Talking. Dan Wu's coming. He
That's
was
true.
on one of the similar shows back in the 90s, right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I don't want to get in trouble here, but like I looked in my scrapbook for shows over 20 years ago. The headline in the Westport News was homosexuality. I'm not even going there, but we had a show both on Cablevision as well as on radio where Dan was on that show. Dan has the column 06880 in Westport. It's very widely read, and he has volunteered to come on and talk about his experience on this topic, as well as being with 4 other people. So thank you, Dan. Thank you for all of you. And all I want to say is, Mike, do you have anything you want to say about this show tonight?
Well, I think it was a great show. It was well received. We had a lot of great comments from the everyone watching in YouTube and Facebook world. So that's great. I love to see that interactivity with the audience. I mean, I think that's what it's all about, bringing the kids to them. If everyone that enjoyed the show, please subscribe to us on YouTube or follow our page on Facebook or Twitch. And you'll be notified when the next stream comes out. We'll be next week, same bat time, same bat channel. So it'll be 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. And we have, like you said, we have lots of guests coming, and I think that's pretty much it.
Well, you're now all a part of this, and because of what you did tonight, hopefully it inspires other people to watch and be involved in further discussions. And we're going to cover as many areas as we can over the weeks to come to open up the doors to realize that the youth has a lot to say, and you just don't get enough of a chance to really speak up for yourselves. We're tired of hearing adults. Adults are okay, but as I always say, we need to hear from you. And you obviously have a lot to say. So again, thank you. And from all of us, our Kids Are Talking, Mike, everybody.
And thanks to our sponsor, Paradigm Financial Partners. And I guess we'll see you next week.
And I'm going to think about a lot of things you said to me tonight, too. And so I've learned a lot. So thank you for that. So from all of us, our Kids Are Talking, see us next week, 7 o'clock, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Remember, if you missed the show, just go to Kids Are Talking with Dr. Don. And hopefully you find it. And if you don't, I'm sure I'll hear about it.
If you don't find us, we'll find you.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Thank you again.